The fluorescent lights of St. Catherine's emergency room cast harsh shadows across the linoleum as two security guards moved toward bed 4, their hands resting on zip-tie cuffs. On the gurney lay what everyone assumed was just another homeless drifter, unwashed, incoherent, disposable. But when Nurse Maya Chen refused to step aside, when she looked into his half-conscious eyes and saw something the doctors had missed, everything changed. Because the man they were about to throw into the street wasn't a vagrant. He was Lieutenant Commander Jacob Sterling, Navy SEAL, officially killed in action 3 years ago. And the truth he carried would turn St. Catherine's into a battlefield, expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power, and prove that the quiet night nurse they all underestimated was the only thing standing between justice and a cover-up worth killing for. If you want to see how a single nurse brought down an empire of lies, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. Maya Chen had learned long ago that the emergency room at St. Catherine's Medical Center sorted people into two categories: those worth saving and those worth discarding. She'd never agreed with it, but after 6 years on the night shift, she'd seen the pattern repeat itself with mechanical precision. The well-dressed got fast-tracked to CT scans, the insurance cards got the private rooms, and the ones who stumbled in smelling of the street got a cursory exam, a tetanus shot if they were lucky, and a social worker's business card they'd never use. Tonight's discard arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, carried in by 2 EMTs who looked eager to be rid of him. Found him collapsed behind the Greyhound station, the older one said, already filling out the drop-off form. Probably drunk, definitely hasn't showered in weeks. Good luck. Maya approached bed 4 in the far corner of the ER, the spot they reserved for the patients no one wanted to deal with. The man on the gurney was maybe 40, maybe 50, hard to tell under the grime. His clothes were layers of mismatched jackets and torn cargo pants, the kind of outfit assembled from donation bins and dumpsters. His breathing was shallow, his skin had a grayish pallor, and his right arm showed signs of infection from what looked like an old wound. She pulled on gloves and began the intake assessment. Pulse weak but steady, temperature 103.2. Blood pressure concerning. No identification, no insurance card, no emergency contact, just another John Doe for the system to process and forget. Bed 4 needs a full workup, she called to Dr. Raymond Voss, the senior physician on duty. Voss glanced over from where he was reviewing x-rays, his expression souring. We're at capacity, Chen. Clean him up, get some fluids in him, and call the shelter. We need that bed for actual emergencies. He has a fever over 103 and an infected wound that might be septic. That is an actual emergency. Then give him antibiotics and move him to the hallway. Senator Whitmore's chief of staff called. His daughter's coming in with possible appendicitis, and she needs priority care. Maya felt the familiar anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice level. Everyone here gets the same standard of care. That's the oath you took. Voss stepped closer, lowering his voice to a dangerous whisper. The oath I took doesn't pay for this hospital's expansion wing or your salary. Senator Whitmore's foundation donated $3 million last year. His daughter gets bed 4. Move your vagrant or I'll have security do it for you. He walked away before she could respond, already barking orders to clear the trauma bay for their VIP patient. Around the ER, the other nurses avoided Maya's eyes. They'd all been through this before. They all knew how it worked. Maya returned to bed 4, her jaw tight. The man's eyes were moving beneath his lids, caught in some fevered dream. She began cleaning the wound on his forearm, noting the deep scarring around it. Old tissue damage, the kind that came from more than just a street fight. That's when she saw his wrist. Beneath the dirt and dried blood, there was a tattoo. Not the crude prison ink or amateur designs she usually saw. This was professional, precise, a trident crossed with an anchor, surrounded by text too small to read under the grime. She cleaned more carefully, and the words emerged. The only easy day was yesterday. Navy SEAL motto. Her hand stilled. She looked at the man's face again, seen past the beard and the dirt. His bone structure was sharp, military straight, despite the apparent malnutrition. The scars on his visible skin weren't random. They were surgical, precise, the kind left by bullets and field medicine. And his hands, despite the filth, showed calluses in specific patterns, Trigger finger, rope burns, tactical training. "Hey," she said softly, touching his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" His eyes snapped open, crystal blue, completely alert, analyzing her in a microsecond before the fever dragged him back under. But in that instant, Maya had seen it. This wasn't a man broken by the streets. This was a predator pretending to be prey. "Security to the ER," the overhead speaker crackled. "Security to the ER for patient transport." Maya's instincts screamed. She pulled the curtain around bed 4 just as 2 guards appeared, accompanied by Dr. Amanda Cross, the hospital administrator. Cross was all sharp edges and sharper ambitions, the kind of executive who measured success in donor dollars and press coverage. "Nurse Chen," Cross said with artificial sweetness, "we need to move this patient immediately. Senator Whitmore's daughter will be here in 10 minutes. This patient is unstable and needs immediate care. This patient is a homeless indigent who can receive care at the county facility. We've already called transport." "Look at his arms," Maya said, pulling back the blanket to show the scarring. "These aren't street wounds. This man has military training, probably special operations. Something's wrong here." Cross's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Was it recognition? "All the more reason to transfer him to the VA hospital. They're better equipped for veterans. Security, please escort this patient to the ambulance." The guards moved forward. Maya stepped between them and the gurney. "I'm not letting you move a patient in critical condition without a proper examination and treatment plan. If he crashes during transport, that's on you. That's a lawsuit and a medical board review." Dr. Voss appeared, his face red. "Chen, you're out of line. Step aside or you're terminated, effective immediately." The ER had gone quiet. The other nurses, the residents, even the patients who were conscious, everyone watched to see if Maya would fold. She didn't move. "Sir, this patient has signs of sepsis, possible internal bleeding, and a fever that indicates systemic infection. Moving him now could kill him. And if you fire me for refusing to commit malpractice, I'll have my lawyer on the phone before you finish the paperwork." Voss and Cross exchanged a look. The administrator pulled out her phone, stepped away, and made a brief, whispered call. When she returned, her smile was cold. "Fine. You have 30 minutes to stabilize him. Then he goes to County General whether you like it or not, and we'll be discussing your future employment tomorrow morning." They walked away, the security guards following. Maya released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Around her, the ER slowly returned to its normal chaos, but she caught a few supportive nods from the other nurses. 30 minutes. She had 30 minutes to figure out who this man really was, and why the administration was so eager to get rid of him. She worked quickly, drawing blood for a full panel, starting IV antibiotics, and carefully cataloging his injuries. The more she examined him, the more her suspicions solidified. The scars told a story. Gunshot wound to the left shoulder, old but expertly treated. Shrapnel damage across his ribs. A surgical scar on his abdomen consistent with emergency field surgery. And on his back, barely visible under the grime, what looked like burn scarring from an explosion. This wasn't just a soldier. This was someone who'd seen serious combat. His pockets yielded nothing at first, just the usual detritus of street life. But when she checked the inner lining of his jacket, her fingers brushed something hard sewn into the seam. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then carefully opened the hidden pocket. A USB drive, sealed in waterproof plastic. Her heart hammered. Normal homeless people didn't sew USB drives into hidden jacket pockets. She slipped it into her scrub pocket just as the man's eyes opened again, clearer this time. "Don't," he whispered, his voice like gravel. "Don't let them take the drive." "Who are you?" "Jacob Sterling, Commander. They said I died. They're wrong." His hand shot out with surprising strength, gripping her wrist. "The drive, names, dates, coordinates, proof. They'll kill for it. Already tried." "Proof of what?" "Black site. Unauthorized strike. Senator Marcus Whitmore ordered it. Killed my whole team to cover it up. Made it look like we went rogue. I got out. Barely." His eyes bored into hers with desperate intensity. "You have to get that drive to someone who can use it. Federal prosecutor. Real media. Not local. They own local." Maya's mind raced. Senator Whitmore. The same Whitmore whose daughter was about to take this bed. The same Whitmore who donated millions to the hospital. The same Whitmore whose chief of staff had called ahead. The administration, she said slowly. They know who you are. Worse. They're working with his people. How do you think I ended up here? They tracked me. This was a trap. Bring me in, finish the job, make it look like John Doe overdose. Clean, untraceable. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. But you screwed up their timeline. Good. Before Maya could respond, the ER doors burst open. But it wasn't the senator's daughter on a gurney. It was two men in dark suits, moving with military precision, their eyes scanning the room until they locked onto bed 4. They had the look of private contractors, expensive haircuts, tactical awareness, and something concealed under their jackets. Dr. Cross appeared immediately, as if she'd been waiting for them. Gentlemen, bed 4, as discussed. We've kept him stable for transport. Maya stepped in front of the gurney again. Who authorized this? I haven't cleared him for any transport. The taller of the two men smiled without warmth. We're here on behalf of the patient's family. We have all the necessary authorizations. Show me. He pulled out a folded document. It looked official. Hospital letterhead, signatures, transfer orders to a private facility. But when Maya looked closely, the patient name was listed as John Doe 2847, not Jacob Sterling. They didn't even know his real name on paper. This is fraudulent, she said. This patient has identified himself as Jacob Sterling, and I'm not releasing him to unknown individuals without proper verification of identity and authorization. The man's smile vanished. You're making a mistake, nurse. The only mistake would be violating patient rights and hospital protocol. If you want to file a formal transfer request, you can go through the proper channels. Until then, step back from my patient. The second man moved his hand toward his jacket. Maya's breath caught. Was he reaching for a weapon in the middle of the ER? But then Dr. Voss was there, his voice placating. Nurse Chen, these gentlemen have full authorization. I've personally approved the transfer. You're relieved of duty. Security will escort you out. You can't. I can and I am. You're suspended pending review. Remove your badge and leave the premises. The security guards from earlier approached, looking uncomfortable but determined. Maya's mind raced through her options. She could fight this, could refuse, but that would only get her arrested and removed anyway, and then Jacob Sterling would have no one. She unclipped her badge slowly, buying seconds to think. Sterling's words echoed. They'll kill for it. I need to log out of the computer system and collect my personal items from my locker, she said. Voss hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Security will accompany you. Maya walked toward the nurse's station with one guard following her, her mind working through possibilities. The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. She couldn't let them search her, couldn't let them find it. At the computer, she made a show of logging out while actually pulling up Sterling's file. She hit print on everything, his intake forms, the photos she'd taken of his injuries for documentation, his blood work orders. The printer hummed to life just as an alarm started blaring. Bed 4. Sterling was coding. The guard's attention snapped toward the commotion. Maya grabbed the printed documents, shoved them in her pocket with the USB drive, and moved. But not toward the exit, toward the chaos. The ER erupted into controlled pandemonium. Dr. Voss was calling for the crash cart, nurses were starting compressions, and the two suited men were shouting something about stopping treatment, about letting nature take its course. But Maya had seen Sterling's eyes just before she'd walked away, and she'd seen the slight wink he'd given her. He was faking it. She pushed through to the bedside. I've got compressions. You... She pointed to a resident. Intubation kit. You... Pointing to another nurse. Push one of epi. You're suspended, Voss shouted over the alarm. Fire me after we save his life. Right now, I'm the most experienced critical care nurse in this room, and you need me. For a split second, Voss wavered. The two suited men were trying to get closer, but the press of medical staff blocked them. In the chaos, Maya leaned close to Sterling's ear while appearing to check his airway. I've got the drive. When I say go, you run. His eyes flickered acknowledgement. She called out, pulse check, hold compressions. Everyone stilled. The monitor showed organized rhythm. We've got sinus tack. He's back. The suited men pushed forward immediately. We're taking him now. But Maya had already hit the code blue button again, this time on the wall panel. Patient unstable requiring immediate imaging. Moving to CT, now. She unlocked the gurney wheels and started pushing, other staff instinctively falling in to help move a critical patient. The suited men tried to block them, but Dr. Cross intervened. Let them stabilize him first. We don't want a death on hospital property. Bad for everyone. The words were callous, but they bought Maya precious seconds. She pushed the gurney toward the CT wing, the resident and another nurse following protocol by coming with her. The suited men trailed behind, held back by the basic rules of hospital corridors. You don't run in the halls, you don't interfere with patient transport. But Maya knew those rules wouldn't hold much longer. The CT wing was on the basement level, accessed through the old service corridors that connected the various hospital buildings. During the day, these halls bustled with staff and supply transport. At midnight, they were nearly empty. She pushed the gurney into the elevator, the resident and nurse following. The suited men were 20 feet away, walking fast but not yet running. Hold the door, one called. Maya hit the basement button and the closed door button simultaneously. The doors slid shut just as the men broke into a run. The second the elevator started moving, Sterling sat up. How long do we have? Maybe 90 seconds before they take the stairs. There's an emergency exit in the old radiology wing, leads to the parking structure. You're helping me escape. I'm helping you stay alive long enough to expose whoever tried to kill you. The resident stared at them both, his face pale. What the hell is happening? Dr. Chen is making the worst decision of her career, Maya said, using a title she didn't have. But someone needs to. You two, when we get down there, you never saw which way we went. Understand? The nurse, a young woman named Keisha, who'd been at St. Catherine's for only a year, nodded slowly. They were going to kill him, weren't they? Right here in the hospital. Yes. Then we never saw anything. The elevator dinged. The doors opened onto the basement corridor, dimly lit, smelling of industrial cleaner and old concrete. Maya pushed the gurney out and immediately turned left, away from the main CT area, toward the abandoned radiology wing that had been slated for renovation for 3 years. Behind them, the stairwell door crashed open. Go! Sterling rolled off the gurney, landing on his feet with practiced ease despite the fever and injuries. He was weaker than normal. Maya could see that, but training had taken over. They ran through the maze of corridors, Sterling keeping pace despite staggering occasionally. Behind them, footsteps echoed, shouts. The suited men weren't bothering with pretense anymore. Left here, Maya gasped, pulling Sterling into a narrower hallway lined with old filing cabinets and broken equipment. At the end, a red exit sign glowed dimly. They burst through the door into the parking structure, the cold night air hitting them like a slap. Maya's car was 3 levels up. No good. But there, a maintenance van, keys still in the ignition. You know how to hotwire? Sterling asked. Keys are in it. Night maintenance is lazy. They climbed in just as the exit door behind them slammed open. Maya turned the ignition, the van coughing to life. She threw it in reverse as the first suited man appeared, reaching into his jacket, the glint of metal, definitely a weapon. Maya floored it backward, tires squealing. The van fishtailed, and she cranked the wheel, spinning them 180 degrees before slamming into drive and accelerating up the parking structure ramp. In the rearview mirror, she saw the suited men running back inside, probably heading for their own vehicle. We need to get you to a hospital, Maya said, even as she realized the absurdity of the statement. No hospitals. They'll be watching every ER in the state. Sterling was breathing hard, his hand pressed to his side where blood was seeping through his shirt. The fever's not natural. They dosed me with something. Slow-acting poison or engineered infection. Need to know what before we can treat it. How do you know? Because I felt the injection 3 days ago when they grabbed me in Baltimore. This was always plan A. Let me die of natural causes while in custody. When I escaped, they had to improvise. Maya's nursing brain cataloged symptoms. Fever, weakness, signs of systemic infection, but not following normal sepsis patterns. If it was engineered, they'd need to identify the specific pathogen or toxin. The drive, she said. What's actually on it? Everything. Audio recordings of Whitmore ordering the strike, flight logs showing his private contractor team, financial transfers, the coordinates of the black site where he disappeared 73 prisoners, and the names of everyone who helped cover it up. Sterling coughed, his face gray in the passing streetlights. I spent 3 years gathering it, 3 years pretending to be dead while they hunted the rest of my team. I'm the last one left. Why didn't you go straight to the FBI or the press? I tried. The first reporter I contacted ended up in a car accident. The FBI agent I reached out to retired suddenly and moved to Costa Rica. Whitmore has people everywhere. I needed to surface somewhere unexpected, somewhere I could control the release. He looked at her. I didn't expect a nurse to be the one with the guts to stand up. Maya took a corner too fast, the van's tires protesting. Where do we go? Safe house. I have one location left, about 40 miles north. Old hunting cabin, off the grid. I can hole up there long enough to get the information out through channels Whitmore can't touch, but I need medical care I can trust. His eyes met hers. Can I trust you? Maya thought about her apartment, her job, the career she'd built through night shifts and double overtime. She thought about Dr. Voss's red face, about Cross's cold smile, about the two men who'd been ready to kill a patient in the middle of the ER. She thought about the oath she'd taken. First, do no harm. Yes, she said, you can trust me. Sterling nodded, then his eyes widened, looking at something in the side mirror. Company. A black SUV had appeared behind them, closing fast, not trying to be subtle anymore. Maya pushed the van harder, but it was a hospital maintenance vehicle against what looked like a professional pursuit car. They weren't going to outrun them. Can you shoot? Sterling asked, his voice tight with pain. Never touched a gun in my life. Crash course in 30 seconds. Glove compartment. Maya popped it open one-handed while steering with the other. Inside was a small handgun, something Sterling must have taken from one of the suited men during the chaos. Safety's already off. Point and squeeze. Don't try to aim fancy, just point center mass and fire. The SUV was 10 feet behind them now. Maya could see the driver clearly. Not one of the suited men from the hospital, but someone new. Professional. Determined. They're going to try to disable us, Sterling said. When they do, we bail and run. There's a construction site coming up on the right. We can lose them in there. The SUV surged forward, its reinforced bumper slamming into the van's rear. Maya fought to keep control as they skidded. The SUV pulled alongside and the passenger window rolled down. Now! Sterling shouted. Maya cranked the wheel right, the van jumping the curb and crashing through a chain-link fence into exactly the construction site Sterling had mentioned. The van bounced over rough ground, past piles of steel and concrete barriers. She slammed the brakes and they both tumbled out, Sterling grabbing her arm and pulling her toward a half-finished building frame. Behind them, the SUV crashed through the fence, its headlights sweeping across the construction site like searchlights. They ran into the skeletal structure of the building, climbing over rebar and around support columns. Maya's scrubs were torn, her arms scratched, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Behind them, footsteps. Shouts. The sound of weapons being readied. Sterling pulled her behind a concrete pillar. Listen to me carefully. If something happens to me, you take that drive and you run. There's a contact name in the encrypted folder. Marcus Hendricks, federal prosecutor, Southern District. He's clean. He'll know what to do with it. Nothing's going to happen to you. I've been dying for 3 days. We both know I'm on borrowed time. He pressed something into her hand, a piece of paper with a password written on it. The drive's encrypted. This opens it. Memorize it and destroy the paper. Maya looked at the numbers and letters, burning them into her memory, then tore the paper into tiny pieces and scattered them. A flashlight beam swept across their hiding spot. They pressed deeper into the shadows. Come out, Commander Sterling, a voice called. Professional, calm, almost bored. We can make this quick, the nurse too. No reason for her to suffer. Sterling's hand found Maya's in the darkness. His palm was burning with fever, but his grip was steady. I got 63 men and women killed by trusting the wrong people, he whispered. I won't let you become 64. Then he stood up, drawing their attention, and fired 3 shots toward the flashlight beam. Return fire erupted instantly, muzzle flashes lighting up the construction site like lightning, and in the chaos, Sterling shoved Maya toward a gap in the far wall. "Run!" She ran, tears streaming down her face, clutching the USB drive that held the truth worth dying for. Behind her, gunfire echoed in the night, and Maya Chen, the quiet night shift nurse they'd all underestimated, became the only thing standing between justice and erasure. Maya crashed through a gap in the concrete wall, her hands scraping against rebar as she squeezed through into the darkness beyond. The gunfire behind her had stopped, replaced by voices, barking orders, and the sound of boots on gravel. She didn't let herself think about what that silence meant, didn't let herself imagine Sterling bleeding out among the construction debris. If she stopped now, if she let the fear take over, then everything he'd sacrificed would be for nothing. She found herself in an alley between two warehouses, the kind of industrial no man's land that existed in every city, places where the night shift workers never went, and the streetlights had been broken for years. Her scrubs were torn and dirty, her badge was gone, and in her pocket was a USB drive that contained enough evidence to destroy a United States senator. The nurse who'd started her shift 8 hours ago wouldn't have known what to do with that. But the woman running through the shadows now was someone different, someone who'd watched a conspiracy unfold in real time and chosen to fight instead of comply. She ran until her lungs burned, until the construction site was blocks behind her and the sounds of pursuit had faded. Only then did she duck into a 24-hour laundromat, the fluorescent lights harsh after the darkness. An elderly woman was folding clothes in the corner, earbuds in, lost in her own world. Maya went straight to the bathroom and locked the door. Her reflection in the mirror looked like someone from a disaster film. Wild hair, scratched face, blood on her scrubs that she hoped was all Sterling's and none of her own. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out the USB drive, turning it over in her fingers. So small, so ordinary, and yet worth more lives than she wanted to count. She needed a computer, needed to access the files, verify what Sterling had told her, and figure out how to get them to someone who could actually use them. But every computer left a digital trail, and if Whitmore's people were as connected as Sterling claimed, they'd be monitoring everything. Maya splashed water on her face, trying to think clearly. Sterling had mentioned a federal prosecutor, Marcus Hendricks, Southern District. That meant New York. She was in Riverport, Pennsylvania, which put her about 4 hours from Manhattan if she could find transportation. But showing up at a federal building looking like she'd crawled out of a war zone would get her arrested or committed before she could explain anything. She needed allies, needed resources, needed... Her phone buzzed in her pocket, making her jump. She'd forgotten she still had it. The screen showed 3 missed calls from the hospital and 2 text messages. The first was from Dr. Voss. Return immediately or face termination and legal action. The second was from a number she didn't recognize. The commander told me to watch for you. If you see this, you're alive. Good. Meet me at Sal's Diner on Route 19, booth in the back. Come alone. You have 2 hours before they triangulate your phone. Kate, Maya stared at the message. It could be a trap. Could be Whitmore's people pretending to be Sterling's contact. Could be. The phone buzzed again. Same number. This time a photo. Sterling's military ID from years ago, standing next to another SEAL in desert fatigues. The second man had written on the photo in marker, "Trust Keiko. She's the only one left." Maya's nurse brain noted the details. Sterling looked healthier in the photo, no fever, no poisoning, which meant this photo was recent enough to be taken after he'd supposedly died, after he'd started gathering his evidence. Someone who had access to Sterling's recent photos, who knew his plans, who he trusted enough to send Maya toward. She memorized the number, then did what Sterling had taught her in those frantic minutes. She pulled the battery from her phone, snapped the SIM card in half, and threw the pieces in separate trash cans. If they were tracking her, that trail just went cold. Sal's Diner was 40 minutes away on foot, through neighborhoods that got progressively rougher as she moved away from the hospital district. Maya kept her head down, walking with purpose like she belonged there. Just another night shift worker heading home. The scrubs actually helped. In this part of town, nurses and CNAs walking at odd hours were common enough to be invisible. She reached the diner at 2:17 a.m. It was exactly what she'd expected. Cracked vinyl booths, a counter with spinning stools, and the smell of coffee that had been on the burner too long. A handful of truckers occupied the front booths. In the very back, partially hidden by a pillar, sat a woman in her mid-30s with close-cropped black hair and the same watchful awareness Sterling had possessed. Maya slid into the booth across from her. Up close, the woman had scars on her hands and a tension in her shoulders that spoke of military training. She was dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, and a leather jacket. But Maya would have bet anything she was carrying at least 2 weapons. "You're the nurse," the woman said. Not a question. "You're Keiko." Staff Sergeant Keiko Nakamura, formerly of Naval Special Warfare Development Group, now officially dead, just like Jacob. She pushed a cup of coffee across the table. "Drink. You look like you need it." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Is he alive?" "I don't know. Lost contact with him 6 hours ago when he said he was surfacing at St. Catherine's. The fact that you're here instead of him tells me the plan went sideways." Keiko's eyes were hard. "You have the drive?" Maya's hand instinctively went to her pocket, protective. "How do I know you're really who you say you are?" "You don't. But if I was working for Whitmore, you'd already be in the back of a van with a bag over your head." Keiko leaned forward. "Jacob told me about you when he called from a burner phone yesterday. Said he was going to force a confrontation at the hospital, make them show their hand. Said if he didn't make it out, there was a nurse there who might be stupid enough or brave enough to help. He was betting on brave. He got shot saving me. Then he did exactly what he was trained to do. Protect the mission. You and that drive are the mission now." Keiko's voice softened slightly. "Jacob knew the odds when he surfaced. We all did. Out of the 73 people who were on that operation, only 4 of us made it out alive. 3 of those 4 are now dead, killed in accidents and suicides that were anything but. That leaves me. And now you." Maya pulled out the USB drive and set it on the table between them. "Sterling said there's a federal prosecutor who can help. Marcus Hendricks. Hendricks is solid, but we can't just walk into his office. Whitmore has people in the Southern District probably watching Hendricks's contacts. We need to get the information out in a way that can't be suppressed or buried." Keiko pulled out a laptop from a bag beside her. "First, we verify what's on here. Then we make copies. Then we release it everywhere at once. Media, law enforcement, congressional oversight. We flood the zone so Whitmore can't contain it." She plugged in the drive. A password prompt appeared. Maya recited the code Sterling had given her, the numbers and letters she'd memorized and burned. The drive unlocked, revealing dozens of folders with dates and location codes. Keiko opened the first one. Audio began playing, a phone conversation, the speakers identified by metadata tags. One was Senator Marcus Whitmore. The other was someone listed as contractor lead, Spectre Group. "The asset recovery in Yemen is attracting too much attention," Whitmore's voice said, tinny through the laptop speakers. "We need to sanitize the operation." "Sanitize meaning what exactly?" the contractor asked. "Eliminate everyone with direct knowledge. Make it look like they went rogue, got killed by local forces. I want this buried before the Oversight Committee asks questions." "You're talking about killing American service members." "I'm talking about protecting a strategic operation worth billions in future contracts. The SEALs who ran point on this know too much. They've seen the prisoner transfer records, the black site locations. If they talk, this whole thing unravels. So we don't let them talk." The audio continued, detailing the plan. A false flag attack during a supposedly routine extraction, contractor teams posing as enemy combatants, and a cover story that painted Sterling's unit as having violated engagement protocols. Maya felt sick listening to it, hearing a United States senator casually order the murder of the people who'd sworn to protect the country. "There's more," Keiko said quietly, opening another folder. Financial records showing payments to Spectre Group, flight logs showing Whitmore's private jet visiting black sites, testimony from prisoners who were disappeared, and video. She clicked on a file. The footage was grainy, shot from a helmet camera, showing the interior of a concrete facility. Prisoners in orange jumpsuits, some showing signs of torture. A man in a suit walking through giving orders. When he turned toward the camera, his face was clearly visible. Senator Marcus Whitmore, inspecting his illegal prison like a CEO touring a factory. "This goes beyond a single operation," Maya said, her voice hollow. "This is systematic." Whitmore's been running an off-books detention and interrogation network for years, using contractor groups to grab targets his committee designates. The SEALs were brought in for one specific high-value extraction, which is when Sterling's team realized what they were really supporting. They tried to go through proper channels, reported up the chain of command. That's when Whitmore decided they were a liability. Keiko closed the laptop. The question is how we use this. If we just send it to one person, even Hendricks, it could be buried. We need maximum exposure, all at once. What about the media? Major newspapers, television networks? Whitmore owns pieces of half the media in this country, either directly through shell companies or indirectly through favors and leverage. We send this to the wrong outlet, and it disappears. We need to send it to multiple sources simultaneously, enough that even if Whitmore kills the story at some places, it still breaks at others. Maya's mind was racing through possibilities when the diner door chimed. Both women tensed, Keiko's hand moving subtly toward her jacket. But it was just a tired-looking trucker heading for the counter. "We can't stay here much longer," Keiko said. "Whitmore's people will be canvassing every location within a 50-mile radius of the hospital. We need to move, and we need a secure location to coordinate the release." "Where?" "I have a fallback position about 90 miles from here. Old NSA listening station, decommissioned but still has working power and internet. We can work from there." Keiko started packing up the laptop. "But first we need to know if Jacob's alive or in custody. If they have him, they'll use him as leverage to get you to hand over the drive." As if summoned by the mention of his name, the TV mounted in the corner of the diner flickered to a news broadcast. The late-night anchor's face was serious as a breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom. "We're getting reports of a shooting at St. Catherine's Medical Center in Riverport. Details are still emerging, but sources say a disgruntled former employee opened fire in the emergency room before fleeing the scene. Police are searching for Maya Chen, a nurse suspended earlier this evening, who is considered armed and dangerous. We'll update you as more information becomes available." Maya's face appeared on screen, her hospital ID photo, professional and smiling, now being broadcast as a dangerous fugitive. The diner went quiet. The trucker at the counter glanced at the TV, then at Maya. His hand moved toward his phone. Keiko was faster. She stood smoothly, her hand now visibly on the gun at her hip, though she didn't draw it. "Sir, I'd really appreciate it if you kept that phone in your pocket for the next 5 minutes. After we leave, you can call whoever you want. But right now, that woman hasn't hurt anyone, and the people who say she has are the same ones who'll kill her if they find her." The trucker looked at Keiko, at Maya, at the gun. He was maybe 50, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent his life on the road, seeing things and minding his own business. "I didn't see anything," he said finally, putting his phone down. "I'm just here for the coffee." "Appreciate it." They were out the door in seconds, climbing into a nondescript sedan parked in the shadows beside the diner. Keiko drove, keeping to side streets and residential areas where police presence would be lighter. "They're moving fast," Maya said, watching the streets blur past, "putting out a story that makes me look like the threat." Standard playbook. Control the narrative, make you the villain, and suddenly every cop in the state is looking for you. Even if you turn yourself in and tell the truth, you're just a disgruntled employee with a wild story and no credibility. Keiko took a corner sharply. "That's why we have to get the evidence out before they find us. Once it's public, the narrative shifts. You become a whistleblower instead of a suspect." "What about Sterling? If he's in custody?" "Then he's already dead or wishing he was. Whitmore's people won't keep him alive longer than necessary. They'll interrogate him to find out who else knows, what other copies of the evidence exist, and then he'll disappear." Keiko's voice was flat, clinical. "Jacob knew that risk when he surfaced. We honor his sacrifice by finishing the job." Maya wanted to argue, wanted to demand they find Sterling first, save him before releasing the evidence. But the nurse in her knew the triage reality. Save the patient you can actually save, not the one already bleeding out. They drove in silence for 20 minutes, leaving the city limits and heading into rural Pennsylvania. The landscape shifted to farmland and forest, the kind of emptiness that offered either refuge or exposure depending on who was looking. Keiko pulled off the main highway onto a barely visible dirt road, the sedan bouncing over ruts and rocks. "The listening station is another mile," she said. It was decommissioned in the 90s when satellite tech made ground stations obsolete. Most people don't even know it exists anymore, but it still has a dedicated landline connection and a backup generator, perfect for what we need. The building appeared through the trees, a concrete bunker with a rusted satellite dish tilted at an angle like a broken monument. Keiko parked behind it, out of sight from the road, and led Maya inside through a door that looked locked, but opened with a specific sequence of turns. The interior was surprisingly intact. Rows of old computer equipment, dusty but functional, and walls lined with maps and communication cables. Keiko moved with practiced familiarity, flipping breakers and firing up a generator that coughed to life with a diesel rumble. "Welcome to my office," she said, booting up a modern laptop that looked wildly out of place among the Cold War equipment. "We've got maybe 6 hours before someone thinks to search decommissioned sites. That's our window." Maya watched as Keiko pulled up an encrypted email client and began drafting messages. "Who are you sending it to?" "Everyone. Marcus Hendricks at the Southern District, investigative reporters at the New York Times, Washington Post, ProPublica, and 3 independent journalists I know are clean. I'm also sending it to the Senate Ethics Committee, the Inspector General's office, and the House Intelligence Committee. Some of those people are probably compromised, but not all of them. The ones who aren't will run with it." "What about Sterling's family? Do they know he's alive?" Keiko paused, her hands hovering over the keyboard. Jacob didn't have family. His parents died in a car accident when he was in basic training. No siblings, no wife, no kids. The only family he had was his team, and Whitmore killed most of them. She resumed typing. "That's what makes this so easy for people like the senator. Kill a man with no connections. No one asks questions." Maya felt the weight of that isolation. Sterling had spent 3 years gathering evidence, living like a ghost, all to expose the truth. And in the end, the only person who'd stood beside him was a nurse who'd met him 8 hours ago. "I barely knew him," Maya said quietly, "but he trusted me with this. Why?" "Because trust isn't about time. It's about character. Jacob could read people. It kept him alive in places where one wrong assessment meant death. He read you and decided you were worth the bet." Keiko attached the files to the emails. "Now you get to prove him right." The uploads began, each email containing the full contents of the drive: audio, video, financial records, testimony. Maya watched the progress bars inch forward, each percentage point representing another piece of Whitmore's empire crumbling. At 73%, the lights flickered. "Generator's struggling," Keiko said, adjusting settings. "Come on, just a few more minutes." 85%. The laptop screen showed confirmation that 3 emails had successfully sent, then 4, then 6. At 92%, they heard it, the distant sound of vehicles approaching. Keiko's head snapped up. "They found us." "How?" "Doesn't matter. We need those last emails to send." She pulled a handgun from her jacket and pressed it into Maya's hands. "You remember what Jacob taught you? Point, center, mass, squeeze, don't pull." "I can't." "You can, and you will, if it comes to it. But hopefully it won't." Keiko moved to a window, peering through the grimy glass. 2 SUVs, probably 8 hostiles. They're not rushing in, which means they want to negotiate first. 95%. The vehicle stopped outside, doors opening with synchronized precision. Maya's hands were shaking as she held the gun, the weight of it foreign and terrifying. A voice called from outside, amplified by a megaphone. "Maya Chen, this is federal law enforcement. We have a warrant for your arrest. Come out with your hands up and no one gets hurt." "Federal law enforcement, my ass," Keiko muttered. Whitmore's contractors wearing tactical gear to look official. She called back, "Show me a badge and a warrant through the door slot." Silence. Then, "We're not negotiating with a terrorist. You have 2 minutes to surrender." 98%. 1 email left to send. The one to Marcus Hendricks, with a personal note Keiko had written explaining the chain of custody and the circumstances of Sterling's death. "They're not going to wait," Maya said. "They don't have to. They just need to stall long enough for the last file to—" The laptop chimed. 100%. All emails sent. Keiko smiled grimly. "Got you, you son of a bitch!" The first flashbang grenade came through a window, exploding in a disorienting burst of light and sound. Maya dropped, her ears ringing, the gun clattering from her hands. Through the chaos, she saw Keiko moving with practiced efficiency, returning fire through the window, buying them seconds. "Basement!" Keiko shouted. "There's a tunnel that leads to the tree line. Go!" Maya scrambled toward a hatch in the floor that Keiko kicked open. Below was darkness and the smell of earth. She dropped through just as bullets started punching through the bunker walls, the old concrete no match for modern armor-piercing rounds. Keiko followed, pulling the hatch shut and jamming it with a metal rod. "Move fast. They'll figure out the tunnel in about 30 seconds. They ran through the darkness, Maya's hands scraping against rough concrete walls, her breath coming in panicked gasps. Behind them, the sound of the hatch being forced open, then voices and flashlight beams. The tunnel ended at a rusted ladder leading up to a concealed exit in the forest. Keiko went first, checking for threats before pulling Maya up into the night air. They were maybe 200 yards from the bunker, hidden in dense undergrowth. "We split up," Keiko said, pressing a burner phone into Maya's hand. "There's one number programmed in. It's a dead-drop contact who can get you to Hendrix. Use it only when you're somewhere public, somewhere they can't grab you without witnesses." "Where will you go?" "I'm going to make sure they're too busy chasing me to worry about you." Keiko squeezed Maya's shoulder. "Jacob died buying you time to get this out. I'm not dying, but I'm damn well going to make sure his sacrifice counted. Now run." Maya ran, crashing through the forest as gunfire erupted behind her. She didn't look back, didn't let herself think about Keiko making a last stand against 8 trained killers. She just ran, clutching the burner phone like a lifeline, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the knowledge that somewhere in the digital ether, emails were landing in inboxes that would change everything. She emerged from the forest onto a county road just as dawn was breaking. A milk truck was rumbling past, and Maya flagged it down, her appearance disheveled enough that the driver almost didn't stop. "Please," she gasped. "I need a ride to the nearest town. My car broke down and my phone's dead." The driver, an older man with kind eyes, hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Climb in. I'm heading to Millbrook, about 30 miles east." Maya pulled herself into the cab, her whole body shaking with adrenaline crash. As the truck pulled away, she looked back at the forest where Keiko had stayed behind, where Sterling had been shot, where everything had gone from routine night shift to full-scale conspiracy in less than 12 hours. The driver was talking, asking if she was okay, if she needed him to call someone. Maya barely heard him. She was staring at the burner phone, at the single program number that represented her only path forward. Behind her, the sun was rising over Pennsylvania farmland, painting everything gold and peaceful. And somewhere in that beautiful morning, Senator Marcus Whitmore was waking up to discover his entire world was about to explode. The milk truck driver's radio crackled to life with the morning news, and Maya's stomach dropped as she heard her own name. Authorities are now calling the manhunt for Maya Chen a matter of national security. The former nurse is believed to have stolen classified medical records and may be working with domestic extremist groups. Senator Marcus Whitmore issued a statement from Washington this morning calling for her immediate apprehension. The driver glanced at her, his expression shifting from concern to suspicion. Maya saw the exact moment recognition clicked into place, his eyes widening, his hand moving toward the CB radio mounted on the dashboard. "Don't," she said quietly. "Please just let me out here. You never saw me." "You're that nurse, the one who shot up the hospital." "I didn't shoot anyone, but the people who are saying I did will kill me if they find me, and they'll kill you too if they think you helped me." Maya's hand was on the door handle. "I'm getting out. You can report this in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whenever you want. Just give me a head start." The driver's jaw worked, his weathered face showing the internal debate. Finally, he slowed the truck to a stop on the shoulder of the empty highway. "I got a daughter about your age, works as a teacher down in Harrisburg. I'd want someone to give her a chance if she was in trouble." He reached into his lunchbox and pulled out a baseball cap and a denim jacket. "Take these, and there's $40 in the jacket pocket. It's all I got on me." Maya's eyes burned. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just prove them wrong about you." She climbed out, pulling on the jacket and cap, and watched the truck rumble away into the sunrise. The $40 wouldn't get her far, but it was enough for a bus ticket to somewhere with more people, more places to hide. The burner phone felt heavy in her pocket as she started walking toward Millbrook. The town materialized out of the farmland like something from a postcard. Main Street with a diner, a gas station, a library that doubled as the community center. It was barely 6 a.m., but the diner was already open, serving breakfast to farmers and early shift workers. Maya slipped inside, keeping the cap low over her face, and ordered coffee and toast with half of her cash. The television mounted in the corner was tuned to a national news channel. Maya forced herself to watch as her story unfolded with terrifying speed. They were showing footage of St. Catherine's Medical Center, police tape blocking the emergency entrance. Dr. Voss stood beside Senator Whitmore, both looking grave and concerned. "This woman was clearly unstable," Voss was saying. "She'd been exhibiting erratic behavior for weeks. When we tried to get her help, she became violent. We never imagined she would do something like this." The senator placed a sympathetic hand on Voss's shoulder. "This tragedy highlights the urgent need for better mental health screening in our medical facilities. I'll be introducing legislation next week to address this crisis." Maya wanted to throw her coffee cup at the screen. Instead, she pulled out the burner phone and dialed the only number programmed into it. 3 rings, then a click. "Identify yourself," a woman's voice said, professional, cautious. "Keiko told me to call this number, said you could get me to Marcus Hendricks." A pause. "Are you the package?" "If that means the nurse everyone's hunting, then yes." "Where are you?" Maya hesitated. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, but isolation was a death sentence. "Millbrook, small town, eastern Pennsylvania. There's a Greyhound station 2 miles north on Route 19. Bus leaves for Philadelphia at 8:15 a.m. Be on it. When you arrive, go to Reading Terminal Market, west entrance. Someone will make contact. They'll approach you and mention the weather in Baltimore. That's your verification code." "How will they know what I look like?" "We'll know. And Maya, don't use that phone again after this call. Ditch it. Ditch it somewhere public, not in a trash can where it can be easily recovered. Somewhere it'll be found and moved, creating a false trail." The line went dead. Maya finished her coffee, left the phone tucked into a newspaper dispenser outside a convenience store, and started the 2-mile walk to the bus station. Her feet ached, her body screamed for sleep, but adrenaline and fear kept her moving. The Greyhound station was a converted gas station, barely more than a ticket window and a bench. Maya bought a ticket to Philadelphia with her remaining cash. Using a fake name, the bored teenager behind the counter didn't bother to verify. She sat on the bench, watching every car that passed, waiting for the black SUVs to appear. The bus arrived at 8:12, wheezing to a stop with the resigned exhaustion of machinery pushed too hard for too long. Maya climbed aboard, choosing a seat near the emergency exit, and tried to blend into the collection of travelers, students heading back to college, workers commuting to city jobs, people running from something or toward something or just running. As the bus pulled onto the highway, Maya allowed herself to breathe. 2 hours to Philadelphia. 2 hours to figure out what came next. She closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she started to drift, she saw Sterling's face as he pushed her toward safety, heard the gunfire, felt the weight of the evidence burning in her pocket. Except the evidence wasn't in her pocket anymore. It was in the inboxes of journalists and prosecutors, a digital bomb waiting to detonate. The question was whether it would explode before Whitmore's people found her. The answer came 45 minutes into the ride. The bus driver's radio squawked with a traffic update, then a news bulletin. Police are setting up checkpoints on all major highways out of the Riverport area, searching for fugitive nurse Maya Chen. Travelers should expect delays and have identification ready. Maya's pulse hammered. Checkpoints meant they were casting a wide net, meant they were willing to inconvenience thousands of people to find her. That wasn't standard procedure for a lone suspect. That was the kind of resource deployment that came from the very top. She needed to get off this bus before they reached a checkpoint. At the next rest stop, Maya slipped off while other passengers filed toward the bathrooms and vending machines. She walked casually toward the tree line bordering the parking lot, then ran once she was out of sight. Behind her, she heard the bus driver calling for final boarding, but she was already disappearing into the woods. Pennsylvania forests in early autumn were a mix of evergreens and trees just starting to turn, providing decent cover but treacherous footing. Maya moved as quickly as she dared, angling northeast based on the sun's position, trying to parallel the highway without being visible from it. She walked for 3 hours, her hospital shoes disintegrating, her legs burning. When she finally emerged onto a rural road, she was limping and desperate. A farm truck passed, then stopped. The driver was a woman in her 60s wearing coveralls and a suspicious expression. "You lost?" "Car trouble," Maya lied. "Phone's dead. I'm trying to get to my sister's place in Doylestown." The woman studied her for a long moment. "You don't look like trouble, but these days you never know. I'll take you as far as the county line, but that's it." "Thank you." They rode in silence for 20 minutes, the truck's radio playing country music instead of news. The woman dropped Maya at a crossroads with a gas station and a hand-painted sign advertising fresh eggs. Maya thanked her again and watched the truck disappear before approaching the gas station. Inside, a young clerk was absorbed in his phone, barely glancing up as Maya entered. She bought a bottle of water with change scrounged from the jacket pocket and asked to use the bathroom. The clerk waved permission without looking. In the bathroom, Maya assessed the damage. Her face was scratched, her hands were blistered, and the scrubs under her borrowed jacket were torn beyond repair. She looked exactly like what she was, someone running for their life. She cleaned up as best she could, using paper towels and hand soap to scrub away the dirt and blood. When she emerged, she looked marginally more human, though still far from presentable. The wall clock showed 2:37 p.m. She'd missed the contact window in Philadelphia by hours. The people Keiko had arranged to help her would assume she'd been caught or had decided not to come. She was alone again, with no money, no phone, and no plan. The television mounted in the gas station corner caught her attention. Breaking news, a press conference from Washington, D.C. Senator Whitmore stood at a podium, flanked by officials from the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. "I'm devastated to report that my daughter Cassandra was one of the victims of Maya Chen's rampage at St. Catherine's Medical Center," Whitmore was saying, his voice thick with practiced grief. "She didn't survive her injuries. This senseless violence has taken my child, and I will not rest until the person responsible faces justice." Maya's blood ran cold. Whitmore's daughter had never been at the hospital. That was the whole reason they'd wanted Bed 4 cleared, to make room for her when she arrived. This was a lie, a calculated fabrication to generate sympathy and justify the manhunt. "We believe Chen is part of a larger conspiracy aimed at destabilizing our national security infrastructure," Whitmore continued. "She had access to classified medical information about government personnel and may have shared it with hostile foreign actors. I'm calling on every law enforcement agency in this country to treat her as an active threat." The FBI official stepped forward. "We're offering a $1 million reward for information leading to Maya Chen's capture. She should be considered armed and extremely dangerous. Do not approach her. Call the tip line immediately." $1 million. Whitmore had just made every person in America a potential bounty hunter. Maya backed away from the television, her mind racing. The clerk was looking at her now, really looking, his eyes moving from her face to the TV screen and back again. Recognition dawned, followed by greed. "It's you," he whispered, his hand reaching for the phone behind the counter. Maya didn't think. She grabbed a display rack of sunglasses and threw it at him, then bolted for the door. Behind her, she heard him shouting, heard the phone clattering as he dialed. She ran across the parking lot, past the propane tanks, and into the cornfield beyond. The stalks were tall and dense, providing cover but also disorientation. Maya ran until her lungs were screaming, then collapsed between the rows, gasping for air. In the distance, she could hear sirens, multiple vehicles approaching fast. She couldn't keep running. Every mile she covered, they covered faster. Every person she encountered was a potential informant, motivated by $1 million and convinced she was a murderer. This was unsustainable. Maya needed to go on offense. The emails Keiko had sent would be sitting in inboxes now, waiting to be opened and verified. But in the current news cycle, with Whitmore controlling the narrative, would anyone believe them? Or would they be dismissed as forgeries created by a disturbed woman with a grudge? She needed someone to go public immediately, someone whose credibility was unquestionable. And she needed to be there when they did, alive and able to tell her side of the story. Marcus Hendricks. The federal prosecutor was her best shot, maybe her only shot. But Philadelphia was still 40 miles away, and she had no transportation and no money. Maya forced herself to think like Sterling would have, tactically, pragmatically. What assets did she have? Knowledge of the truth, medical training, determination, and the element of surprise because Whitmore would expect her to keep running, to hide, not to walk straight into the federal building. She waited in the cornfield until dark, listening to the search helicopters overhead, watching their spotlights sweep across the landscape. When full night fell, she began moving again, using the stars to navigate northeast toward Philadelphia. She walked through fields and forests, avoiding roads and buildings. She crossed a creek, the icy water shocking her into sharper awareness. She climbed over fences and through ditches, every movement measured against the risk of detection. Around midnight, she reached the outskirts of a larger town, Westchester, based on the signs. The streets were quiet, most businesses closed, but a 24-hour pharmacy glowed like a beacon. Maya watched it from the shadows, noting the security cameras, the clerk inside, the layout. She needed supplies, needed something to treat her blistered feet and clean her wounds before infection set in. And she needed to look presentable enough to walk into a federal building tomorrow without being immediately identified as a fugitive. The pharmacy's back entrance was near a dumpster, partially obscured from the street. Maya waited until the clerk was focused on a customer at the front counter, then slipped through the back door that an employee had propped open for a smoke break. Inside, she moved quickly through the aisles, grabbing bandages, antibiotic ointment, a cheap prepaid phone, and a package of hair dye. She shoved everything into a reusable shopping bag and headed for the exit. "Stop right there!" The clerk had seen her on the security camera. He was blocking the front door, phone in hand, probably already dialing 911. Maya's nurse training kicked in. She assessed him quickly. Mid-20s, out of shape, scared but trying to look brave. Not a fighter. "I don't want to hurt you," she said. "Just let me leave." "You killed Senator Whitmore's daughter. You're a terrorist." "I'm a nurse who tried to save a patient from being murdered. Everything you've heard on the news is a lie, and if I don't get out of here alive, the truth dies with me." The clerk's hand wavered on the phone. "That's what a crazy person would say. Call the police. But when you do, remember that I could have hurt you and didn't. Remember that I only took medical supplies, not drugs or money. And when the truth comes out, remember that you had a chance to help and chose not to." She moved toward the door. The clerk stepped aside, his face pale. "Why should I believe you?" "Because in about 12 hours, you're going to see evidence that proves everything I'm saying, and you'll know you met the person who brought it to light." Maya paused at the door. "Thank you for not stopping me." She disappeared into the night before he could change his mind. In an abandoned construction site, Maya used the supplies to treat her injuries, working by the light of her new burner phone. The blisters on her feet were infected, the scratches on her arms inflamed. She cleaned everything with methodical precision, years of medical training guiding her hands, even as exhaustion pulled at her consciousness. The hair dye was dark brown, a stark change from her natural black. She applied it in a gas station bathroom at 3 a.m., cutting her hair short with a pocket knife she'd found in the construction site, transforming her appearance enough that casual observers might not immediately recognize her from the photos being broadcast nationwide. By dawn, she looked different enough to risk public transportation. She used the prepaid phone to search for Marcus Hendricks's office address, the federal building in downtown Philadelphia, 6th floor. She memorized the address, then destroyed the phone's SIM card. The commuter train into Philadelphia was crowded with morning rush hour workers, all focused on their phones and tablets, headlines screaming about the manhunt. Maya kept her head down, the baseball cap pulled low, and tried to breathe normally. At 30th Street Station, she merged into the crowds, just another commuter among thousands. She walked the mile to the federal building, her new appearance and borrowed confidence carrying her past people who might have recognized the photos of the woman they were hunting. The federal building was an imposing structure of concrete and glass, ringed with security barriers and metal detectors. Maya approached the public entrance, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Inside, federal marshals manned the security checkpoint. Maya joined the line of lawyers and officials and citizens with business before various agencies. When her turn came, She placed her borrowed jacket and bag on the conveyor belt and stepped through the metal detector. Clear. She collected her things and moved toward the elevators, half expecting someone to shout her name, to recognize her despite the disguise. But no one looked twice. She was invisible in the way that desperate people often are, too painful to acknowledge. The sixth-floor directory listed the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Pennsylvania. Maya walked through glass doors into a reception area where a security guard sat behind a desk. "I need to see Marcus Hendricks," she said. "It's urgent." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but tell him I have information about Operation Nightfall. He'll want to see me." Operation Nightfall was one of the operation names Keiko had mentioned from the files, the designation for Whitmore's Black Site program. The guard's expression didn't change, but he picked up the phone and made a quiet call. 5 minutes later, a woman in a sharp suit emerged from the inner offices. She was maybe 40, with steel-gray eyes and the bearing of someone who'd spent her career prosecuting the worst humanity had to offer. "I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Marks," she said. "Who are you and how do you know about Operation Nightfall?" Maya pulled off the baseball cap, letting her newly dyed and cut hair show. "My name is Maya Chen, and I'm here to surrender, but only if Marcus Hendricks agrees to hear everything I have to say before anyone calls it in." Marks's eyes widened with recognition, but to her credit, she didn't immediately signal the guard. Instead, she studied Maya with the same analytical intensity Maya used to assess patients in the ER. "That's quite an entrance," Marks said finally. "Follow me, and keep your hands where I can see them." She led Maya through a maze of corridors into a conference room with a view of the Philadelphia skyline. "Wait here. Touch nothing. Move and the marshals outside will assume you're a threat." Maya sat in the leather chair, her entire body trembling with exhaustion and fear and relief. She'd made it. Against every obstacle, every person hunting her, she'd made it to the one place that might actually listen. The door opened 10 minutes later. The man who entered was tall, African-American, with silver threading through his close-cropped hair and the kind of presence that commanded courtrooms. Marcus Hendricks in person looked exactly like his official photo, but with an intensity the camera hadn't captured. He sat across from her, Jennifer Marks standing behind him like a sentinel. "I received an interesting email this morning," Hendricks said. "Dozens of files allegedly proving that Senator Marcus Whitmore ordered the murder of a Navy SEAL team to cover up illegal detention operations. The sender was a Keiko Nakamura, who claimed to be a dead operative. She said if anything happened to her, a nurse named Maya Chen would bring verification." "Keiko's alive?" Maya asked, hope surging. "I don't know. But you're here, which means either the story is true, or you're the most audacious con artist I've ever encountered." Hendricks leaned forward. "So convince me. You have 5 minutes before I'm legally obligated to report your presence to law enforcement." Maya told him everything. Sterling's arrival at the hospital, the assassination attempt disguised as a transfer, the USB drive with its damning evidence, Keiko's last stand at the listening station. She spoke quickly, precisely, leaving nothing out. When she finished, Hendricks was silent for a long moment. "The files in that email," he said finally. "They're being authenticated now by our forensic team. Preliminary analysis suggests they're genuine. The metadata, the audio forensics, everything checks out. But verification will take days, maybe weeks. And in the meantime, Senator Whitmore has mobilized every law enforcement agency in the country to find you. He's claiming you murdered his daughter. His daughter was never at the hospital. That's a lie." "Can you prove it?" Maya thought frantically. "The hospital records, patient intake logs, security footage, none of it will show Cassandra Whitmore anywhere near St. Catherine's that night." Mark spoke up. "We'd need a warrant to access those records. And given Whitmore's connections to the hospital's administration, they'd fight it and probably destroy evidence in the meantime." "Then what do I do?" Maya asked. "Turn myself in and hope the truth comes out before I'm killed in custody? Because that's what will happen. Sterling survived 3 years only to be shot the moment he surfaced. Keiko is probably dead. Everyone who touches this evidence becomes a target." Hendricks stood, pacing to the window. "There's a third option. We go public immediately before Whitmore can suppress it. Hold a press conference, release the evidence to media simultaneously with our formal investigation announcement. Force everything into the open at once." "That makes Maya a permanent target," Marks objected. "Whitmore won't just give up because we release evidence. He'll deny everything, attack her credibility, and probably arrange an accident while she's in protective custody." "I know," Hendricks said, "which is why we don't put her in protective custody. We put her on live television, in front of every camera in America, and let her tell her story, make her too public to disappear quietly." Maya's exhausted brain struggled to process this. "You want me to do a press conference? I'm wanted for murder. I look like I've been living in the woods," which you have, because you've been running from corrupt officials trying to silence you. It's a powerful image. Hendricks turned to Marks. "Get the media team. I want every major outlet here in 2 hours. And get Maya cleaned up, medical attention for those injuries, and our best communication specialist to prep her." Marks nodded and left. Hendricks returned to his seat across from Maya. "I'm putting my career on the line for this," he said quietly. "If you're lying, if this is some elaborate hoax, I'm finished. But I've spent 20 years in federal prosecution, and I've learned to recognize the truth when I hear it. You're telling the truth. Sterling died for this truth. Keiko might have died for it. I'm not going to let that be for nothing." "Good. Because in 2 hours, you're going to stand in front of the world and accuse one of the most powerful senators in America of mass murder. There's no going back from that." Maya thought about the night shift at St. Catherine's, about the patients they'd saved and the ones they'd lost, about the oath she'd taken to do no harm. This was the same thing, just on a larger scale. Save the patient you can save. Tell the truth that needs telling. "I'm ready," she said. Hendricks smiled grimly. "Let's bring down a senator." The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. Maya was taken to a private bathroom where she showered for the first time in 36 hours. A doctor examined her injuries, treating the infected blisters and prescribing antibiotics. A communications specialist coached her on how to speak to cameras, how to stay calm under pressure, how to make every word count. At 11 a.m., the press conference room was packed with journalists, cameras, and curious officials who'd heard whispers of something unprecedented about to happen. Maya stood backstage, wearing borrowed clothes that actually fit, her short dyed hair styled to look intentional rather than desperate. Hendricks appeared beside her. "Remember, you're not a criminal defending yourself. You're a witness exposing corruption. Tell your story, trust the evidence, and let me handle the legal declarations." "What if no one believes me?" "They will. Because Senator Whitmore is about to prove you right." Before Maya could ask what he meant, an assistant rushed over with a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." On the screen was breaking news. Senator Whitmore's daughter, Cassandra, was alive and giving an interview to a local news station in California. She looked confused and upset, saying she'd just heard about the reports of her death and had no idea what was happening. "He got sloppy," Hendricks said with satisfaction. "He fabricated a victim who could contradict him. The lie is already falling apart." Someone called for places. Hendricks walked onto the stage to blinding camera flashes, with Maya following one step behind. The room fell silent. Hendricks approached the podium, his voice carrying the weight of federal authority. "This morning, my office received credible evidence of a conspiracy involving the illegal detention of foreign nationals, the murder of United States military personnel, and the systematic abuse of power at the highest levels of government. The evidence was delivered at great personal cost by individuals who risked everything to expose the truth. I am here to announce a formal investigation into Senator Marcus Whitmore and his role in Operation Nightfall. And I am here to introduce you to the woman who made this possible, Maya Chen." He stepped aside. Maya approached the podium, her hands gripping its edges to keep them from shaking. She looked out at the sea of faces, the cameras broadcasting to millions, and thought about Sterling whispering his final truth, about Keiko holding the line, about every patient she'd ever fought to save. "My name is Maya Chen," she began, "and 48 hours ago, I was a nurse doing my job. Then a dying Navy SEAL whispered the truth about a senator's crimes, and everything I thought I knew about justice shattered. She told them everything." The room was absolutely silent except for her voice and the click of cameras. She was halfway through describing the escape from the hospital when the doors burst open and federal marshals entered, led by a man in an expensive suit who radiated authority and anger. "This press conference is terminated," he announced. "Maya Chen is under arrest for murder, terrorism, and espionage. U.S. Attorney Hendricks, You are suspended pending investigation into obstruction of justice. Hendricks didn't flinch. On whose authority? Mine. Acting Deputy Attorney General Robert Kessler, appointed this morning by executive order to handle this national security crisis. Everyone out. Now. The journalists started shouting questions, cameras still rolling, broadcasting every second. Kessler moved toward Maya, flanked by marshals. You're going to regret this, Kessler said quietly to Hendricks. Both of you. And Maya realized with sinking horror that Whitmore's influence reached even higher than they'd thought, high enough to install his own people in the Department of Justice within hours of the threat emerging. The marshals closed in, and Maya understood that despite everything she'd done, every risk she'd taken, she was about to disappear into federal custody, where Whitmore controlled the people holding the keys. Sterling's grip on Maya's wrist was weak, but his eyes were focused with the intensity of someone who'd spent 3 years surviving on pure determination. He struggled to push himself up on the gurney, monitors still attached to his chest, IV line swinging loose. Commander, you need to stay down, Maya said, her hand on his shoulder. You're still recovering from being poisoned and interrogated for 48 hours. I know. Sterling's voice was hoarse but steady. But I also know those men out there won't stop until we're all dead. So unless you've got a miracle in your pocket, we need to move. The suited man with the megaphone stepped forward, flanked by 6 tactical operators. Commander Sterling, you're in violation of federal detention orders. Surrender yourself and the stolen classified materials immediately. Sterling managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. Federal detention orders. That's creative. Last I checked, kidnapping and illegal imprisonment weren't federal powers. You were declared dead 3 years ago. You have no legal standing. Then you won't mind if a dead man tells his story on national television. The suited man's expression hardened. There won't be any television. You're coming with us, and this time you won't be waking up. Reeves moved to put himself between the tactical team and the gurney, his hand inside his jacket where Maya knew he carried a weapon. Keiko flanked the other side, her stance that of someone calculating angles and odds. Carter and Mendez took positions near the facility entrance, creating a defensive perimeter that would buy them seconds at best. We've got no play here, Reeves said quietly to Maya. They've got superior numbers and firepower. Even if we fight, Sterling won't survive the crossfire. Maya's mind raced through options with the same clinical assessment she used in the ER when a patient was crashing. Every choice led to the same outcome: failure, death, silence. Unless she changed the rules entirely. She pulled out her phone and held it high. Everyone freeze! This phone is connected to a live stream being monitored by federal prosecutors, major news outlets, and approximately 50,000 viewers. Everything happening right now is being broadcast in real time. It was the same bluff she'd used inside, and she saw the suited man's eyes narrow with suspicion. He pulled out his own phone, likely checking for active streams from her number. In seconds, he'd know she was lying, but Sterling understood immediately. He grabbed the phone from her hand with surprising speed and held it at arm's length, pointing it at the tactical team. Smile for the cameras, gentlemen. You're about to become famous as the mercenaries who murdered a Navy SEAL and a nurse on American soil. That phone isn't streaming anything, the suited man said, but his voice carried less certainty. Want to bet your freedom on it? Sterling challenged. Because if you're wrong, if there's even one person watching this, you've just created witnesses to premeditated murder. Witnesses that Senator Whitmore can't threaten or buy off. Witnesses who'll see exactly who gives the order to fire. The tactical team exchanged glances. They were professionals, not true believers. The calculus of acceptable risk was shifting in real time. Then headlights flooded the parking lot as 3 news vans screeched to a stop, satellite dishes already extending. Cameramen poured out, lights blazing, microphones extended. A reporter Maya recognized from the press conference that morning rushed forward. Commander Sterling, is it true you are being held prisoner at this facility? Ms. Chen, can you confirm reports that Senator Whitmore ordered your assassination? The suited man spun toward the news crews, his weapon lowering instinctively. This is a restricted federal operation. You need to leave immediately. Under whose authority? The reporter demanded. We received an anonymous tip that a kidnapping victim was being extracted from this location. We have every right to document a potential crime in progress. Maya realized what had happened. Someone had tipped off the media, probably Hendricks or Marks, creating exactly the public exposure that made violence impossible. The suited man was trapped between his orders to stop them and the reality that killing them now would be career suicide. "Stand down," he said finally to his team. "Let them go." "Sir, our orders." "I said stand down. We'll track them through other means." The tactical team lowered their weapons, creating a narrow path through their perimeter. Reeves didn't hesitate, pushing Sterling's gurney toward their van while Keiko and the others provided cover. Maya walked beside Sterling, one hand on his arm to steady him, the other holding her phone high as if it were still broadcasting. They loaded Sterling into the van under the harsh glare of news cameras. Maya climbed in beside him, immediately checking his vitals. Pulse rapid but strong, blood pressure holding, pupils reactive. Whatever they'd given him during interrogation was wearing off, but he needed proper medical care soon. "Where to?" Reeves asked from the driver's seat as he accelerated out of the parking lot. "Somewhere public," Sterling said. "Somewhere with cameras and witnesses. They won't try anything if we're visible." "The Capitol," Keiko suggested. "There's a late session tonight. Security, press, hundreds of staffers. We show up there with Sterling alive. We force the story into the open in a way Whitmore can't suppress." Maya pulled out the IV line from Sterling's arm and applied pressure to stop the bleeding. "You need a hospital. Your blood pressure is unstable, and there could be organ damage from the poisoning." "I've been unstable for 3 years. Few more hours won't kill me." Sterling met her eyes. "But backing down now will kill the truth. We go to the Capitol." The drive to Washington took 40 minutes through evening traffic, every second weighted with the possibility of black SUVs appearing in the mirrors. But the road stayed clear, and Maya realized the suited man had been telling the truth about tracking them through other means. He was letting them reach the Capitol because that's where Whitmore wanted this confrontation to happen. "It's a trap," she said aloud. "Whitmore knows we're coming. He's had time to prepare." "Of course it's a trap," Sterling said, his breathing labored but his mind sharp. "But it's also a spotlight. Whatever he does, he has to do it in front of Congress and the media. That limits his options." "Does it?" Maya challenged. "He's already lied about his daughter's death, ordered the murder of your entire team, and installed his own people in the Justice Department. What makes you think he won't just have us arrested the moment we walk through those doors?" "Because I recorded everything during my interrogation." Sterling pulled a small device from his pocket, a digital recorder no bigger than a coin. "They thought I was too sedated to be aware. They were wrong. This has 48 hours of Spectre Group operatives discussing Whitmore's orders, the black sites, the cover-ups. They thought they were safe to talk. They weren't." Keiko let out a low whistle. "You recorded your own torture?" "I recorded evidence. There's a difference." Sterling's smile was grim. Maya went public with digital files that could be challenged as fabricated. This is live audio of active conspirators admitting to federal crimes. No way to spin it, no way to deny it. The Capitol building emerged ahead, its white dome illuminated against the night sky. Police barriers ringed the perimeter. Security checkpoints filtered visitors, and news crews clustered around the entrances covering the late-night session. Maya saw it through Sterling's eyes, a fortress of democracy that could either protect them or become their tomb. They parked in a public lot 3 blocks away and approached on foot, Sterling leaning on Maya for support, his weakness evident but his determination unshakable. Keiko and Reeves's team formed a protective circle, watching for threats in the crowds of tourists and staffers. At the visitor entrance, Capitol Police stopped them. "Sir, you need medical attention. We can call an ambulance." "I need to see Senator Marcus Whitmore," Sterling said clearly. "I'm Commander Jacob Sterling, United States Navy, and I have testimony regarding illegal activities conducted under his authority. I'm invoking my right as a service member to report war crimes to congressional oversight." The officer hesitated, clearly recognizing Sterling's name from the news coverage. "I'll need to verify your identity and get clearance from—" "Officer, this is being filmed by 7 news crews." Maya gestured to the cameras that had followed them from the parking lot. "Commander Sterling is a kidnapping victim who escaped from an illegal detention facility less than an hour ago. If you prevent him from entering this building, you're obstructing a federal investigation." The officer made a quick call to his supervisor. 5 minutes later, they were being escorted through the security checkpoint and into the Capitol's marble corridors. Maya had been here once on a high school trip, awed by the history and grandeur. Now it felt like walking into a courtroom where the verdict was already decided. They were led to a secure conference room in the Russell Senate office building, connected to the Capitol by underground tunnel. Inside, Marcus Hendricks waited with Jennifer Marks and 3 people Maya didn't recognize, 2 in military uniform, 1 in an expensive suit with the bearing of serious legal authority. "Commander Sterling," Hendricks said, standing. "Good to see you alive. These are Admiral Patricia Chambers from Naval Special Warfare Command, Colonel David Martinez from the Inspector General's office, and Attorney Sarah Brennan from the Senate Ethics Committee. They're here to take your formal testimony." Sterling shook hands with each of them, his grip weak but his presence commanding despite the hospital gown still visible under his jacket. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice. I have evidence of war crimes, conspiracy to commit murder, and systemic abuse of power involving Senator Marcus Whitmore. We've reviewed the digital files provided by Ms. Chen," Admiral Chambers said. "They're compelling, but Senator Whitmore's attorneys are claiming they're fabricated as part of a disinformation campaign. We need something that can't be challenged." Sterling set the digital recorder on the table. "This contains 48 hours of recorded conversations between Spectre Group operatives while I was being interrogated at their Bethesda facility. They discussed Senator Whitmore's direct orders, the black site locations, and the operational details of how they eliminated my team. All of it is admissible under whistleblower protection statutes." Colonel Martinez picked up the recorder, examining it. "This is significant, but it will take time to authenticate and transcribe. Senator Whitmore is currently in a closed-door session with the Appropriations Committee. He's been informed of your escape and has requested an emergency hearing to address what he's calling a coordinated attack on his character by unstable individuals." "Then let's give him his hearing," Sterling said. "Bring me in front of that committee. Let him face me directly and explain how a dead Navy SEAL managed to record his living conspirators." "That's highly irregular," Brennan objected. "Committee hearings require advance notice, witness preparation." "We don't have time for regular procedure," Maya interrupted. "Every hour we wait is another hour for Whitmore to pressure witnesses, destroy evidence, and spin the narrative. Sterling is here now alive with proof. Use him before they find a way to silence him permanently." Brennan looked at Hendricks, who nodded. "Ms. Chen is right. Whitmore's people tried to kill them twice in the last 3 hours. If we delay, there won't be a third attempt. There will be a success." The attorney pulled out her phone and made a series of rapid calls, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent decades navigating Senate politics. Maya watched Sterling during the wait, monitoring his condition with clinical concern. His color was improving as the sedatives cleared his system, but he showed signs of dehydration and metabolic stress from the poisoning. He needed IV fluids, electrolyte replacement, and a full toxicology workup. Instead, he was about to walk into a Senate hearing room and accuse one of the most powerful men in Washington of mass murder. 20 minutes later, they were being escorted through the Capitol tunnels toward the Appropriations Committee hearing room. The corridors were busy despite the late hour, staffers rushing between offices, lobbyists waiting in alcoves, the machinery of government grinding forward with mechanical indifference to individual crises. The hearing room doors were ornate wood, flanked by Capitol Police. Inside, Maya could hear voices. Whitmore's smooth baritone explaining something to the assembled senators, his tone reasonable and concerned, the performance of a man who believed he'd already won. Brennan opened the doors without knocking, her entrance causing immediate silence. 20 senators looked up from their positions at the curved bench, Whitmore standing at a witness table looking every bit the grieving father and concerned public servant. "Madam Chair," Brennan addressed the senator at the center of the bench, "I apologize for the interruption, but a material witness has arrived with time-sensitive testimony relevant to Senator Whitmore's concerns about attacks on his character." The chair, a woman in her 60s with the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many political games, frowned. "This is highly irregular, Counselor Brennan. We're in the middle of Commander Jacob Sterling, United States Navy, returned from the dead with evidence of war crimes," Brennan said simply. "I believe the committee will want to hear what he has to say." Whitmore's face went pale, then flushed red. This is a circus. That man is a mentally unstable deserter who faked his death to avoid prosecution for what, Senator? Sterling's voice cut across the room as he walked forward, Maya supporting him on one side, Keiko on the other. What exactly was I being prosecuted for? Because according to official records, I died in a training accident. Hard to prosecute a corpse. The room erupted in whispers. Senators leaned toward their aides, phones appeared, and the few journalists allowed in the chamber started typing furiously. Maya helped Sterling to a chair at the witness table, directly across from Whitmore. The chair banged her gavel. Order! Commander Sterling, you understand you're in a secure Senate hearing and anything you say here is on the record? I understand, Madam Chair, and I'm prepared to provide sworn testimony about illegal detention operations, the murder of United States service members, and Senator Whitmore's direct involvement in both. Those are serious allegations, the chair said. Do you have evidence to support them? Sterling placed the digital recorder on the table. 48 hours of audio recorded during my illegal detention at a Spectre Group facility in Bethesda, Maryland. The speakers include operational commanders discussing Senator Whitmore's orders, the locations of black sites, and the systematic elimination of witnesses. I'm prepared to have this authenticated by whatever forensic process the committee requires. This is a fabrication, Whitmore said, his voice rising. A desperate attempt by a disturbed individual and his accomplice, he gestured at Maya, to deflect from their own criminal actions. My daughter is dead because of that woman. This is nothing but revenge. Your daughter is alive and gave an interview in California yesterday, Maya said quietly. The entire country watched it. You lied about her death to generate sympathy and justify hunting me. That lie is provable and on the record. Whitmore's attorney, a man in an expensive suit sitting beside him, leaned in to whisper urgently. The senator's expression shifted from outrage to calculation. I was misinformed about my daughter's condition, he said, his voice now controlled. In the chaos of the situation, I received incorrect information and acted on it. That's a mistake, not a crime. What about ordering the murder of my team? Sterling challenged. Is that a mistake too? I have no idea what you're talking about. If members of your unit were killed, that's a tragedy, but I had nothing to do with it. Then you won't mind if we play some of this recording for the committee. Sterling reached for the device, but Whitmore's attorney moved faster. Madam Chair, we object to the introduction of this alleged evidence. Its chain of custody is unknown, its authenticity unverified, and its admissibility in any legal proceeding highly questionable. This hearing should be suspended until proper forensic analysis can be conducted. The chair looked conflicted. Counselor Brennan, what's the committee's position? We support immediate preliminary review, Brennan said. The recording can be played in this chamber under controlled conditions to determine if it merits formal investigation. Full authentication can follow, but the committee has a right to hear what Commander Sterling has brought forward. The senators conferred among themselves, a huddle of whispered debate. Maya watched Whitmore during the pause, seeing the micro-expressions that betrayed his internal calculation. Should he fight this now or let the recording play, and then attack its credibility? He was gambling that the audio wasn't as damaging as Sterling claimed, or that he could spin it as taken out of context. We'll allow a preliminary review, the chair decided. Technical staff will set up audio equipment. This committee will hear 5 minutes of the recording. If it's relevant and potentially credible, we'll order full forensic authentication. If it's clearly fabricated or irrelevant, this hearing is over. Technical staff appeared with surprising speed, connecting the recorder to the chamber's sound system. Sterling leaned close to Maya, his voice barely a whisper. This is where it gets dangerous. Once they hear this, Whitmore has nothing to lose. Watch for his security detail. If they move, get down. The audio began to play, filling the chamber with the hollow sound of a room designed to muffle screams. The first voice was unfamiliar to Maya, but clearly professional, military trained. A subject is still non-responsive to standard interrogation. Recommend we increase the dosage. A second voice, colder. Negative. The senator wants him coherent enough to identify other potential leaks. We need names before we terminate. The senator specifically requested this? I want that confirmed. Already confirmed. Direct order from Whitmore himself. He wants this cleaned up before the oversight hearing next month. No loose ends. The chamber was silent except for the recording. Maya saw senators' faces shifting from skepticism to shock. Even Whitmore's allies looked disturbed. The recording continued, detailing operational specifics of the black sites, naming other senators who'd been briefed on the program, discussing payment structures through shell companies. It was damning, systematic, and narrated by people who believed they were untouchable. Then Whitmore's own voice came through the speakers, tinny but unmistakable from a phone conversation. I don't care how you do it. Sterling dies, the evidence dies, and this whole thing goes away. I've invested too much in this operation to have it exposed by one self-righteous seal with a conscience. Make it happen. The chair's gavel came down hard. That's sufficient for preliminary purposes. Senator Whitmore, do you have an immediate response to what this committee just heard? Whitmore stood, his composure cracking. That recording is fake. It's been manipulated using voice synthesis technology. Anyone with basic audio software could create something like this. I demand immediate forensic analysis. Which you'll get, the chair said. But in the meantime, I'm recommending you step down from all committee assignments pending investigation, and I'm referring this matter to the Justice Department for criminal review. You're making a mistake, Whitmore said, his voice hardening. This is a political hit job, and you're all falling for it. When this recording is proven fake, I'll remember everyone who abandoned me. Is that a threat, Senator? It's a promise. The chamber erupted in chaos. Senators arguing, attorneys conferring, journalists rushing for the exits to file their stories. In the confusion, Maya saw two men in suits moving through the crowd towards Sterling. Not Capitol Police, their posture too aggressive, their focus too targeted. Keiko? Maya said sharply. Keiko saw them immediately and moved to intercept. But the chamber was too crowded, too chaotic. The men were 20 feet away, then 10, their hands moving inside their jackets. Sterling stood, swaying but determined. Madam Chair, I request immediate protective custody under military authority. As an active duty service member with testimony material to national security, I'm invoking my right to naval protection. Granted, Admiral Chambers said, standing. MPS, secure the witness. Military police materialized from the sides of the chamber, moving with the precision of people trained for exactly this scenario. They formed a wall between Sterling and the approaching men, who melted back into the crowd rather than force a confrontation in front of 20 senators. But Maya saw Whitmore's face in that moment, saw the calculation shift to desperation. He was cornered, his conspiracy exposed, his power evaporating, and cornered predators were the most dangerous. The senator moved toward the exit, his attorney and security detail surrounding him. Maya heard him speaking into his phone, urgent and low. Whatever he was planning, it was happening now. We need to leave, she said to Sterling. He's not done. Neither am I. They followed the MPs through a secure corridor, Hendricks and Marks joining them along with a phalanx of Capitol Police. The group moved through the building's basement levels, heading toward a secure facility where Sterling could be properly protected and debriefed. They were halfway there when the lights went out. Emergency lighting clicked on, bathing the corridor in red. Somewhere in the distance, alarms began to wail. Lockdown protocol, one of the MPs said into his radio. All personnel to secure positions. Possible security breach. Maya's heart hammered. In the darkness, she felt Sterling's hand find hers. He's making his move, Sterling said quietly. Whatever Whitmore's planning, this is it. The corridor ahead exploded in gunfire and the screaming started. The gunfire came from ahead and behind simultaneously, a coordinated assault designed to trap them in the narrow corridor. Maya dropped to the floor, pulling Sterling down with her as bullets chewed through the walls where they'd been standing seconds before. The MPs returned fire, their muzzle flashes strobing in the red emergency lighting like a nightmare made real. They breached the building, Hendricks shouted over the chaos, pressed against the wall beside them. This is Whitmore's endgame. Kill everyone who knows the truth and blame it on a terrorist attack. Sterling was already moving despite his weakened state, combat instincts overriding physical limitations. Service corridor 30 feet east, leads to the underground parking. We move now, or we die here. Keiko appeared through the smoke, her weapon drawn, covering their retreat. MPS are holding the line, but they're outnumbered. These aren't random shooters. They're Spectre Group, full tactical gear. Someone gave them building access and turned off security. Maya's mind flashed to the suited men in the hearing chamber, to Whitmore's urgent phone call. He'd activated whatever backup plan he'd kept for exactly this scenario. Consequences be damned. If they all died here, the narrative became domestic terrorism, the evidence became suspect, and Whitmore could rebuild from the ashes. They ran through the service corridor, emergency klaxon shrieking, following Sterling's lead through a maze of passages he shouldn't have known, but apparently did. Behind them, the firefight intensified. More shooters, more victims, the sound of American democracy bleeding in its own hallways. The corridor ended at a heavy security door. Sterling slammed his palm against it, but the electronic lock was dead, disabled along with the main power. Reeves appeared beside them, breathing hard, and pulled out a breaching charge. Cover your ears and get back. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. The door blew inward, revealing the underground parking structure beyond. They poured through, Maya helping Sterling, who was starting to falter, his body pushed beyond sustainable limits. The parking garage was a concrete cavern, hundreds of vehicles in neat rows, mostly empty at this hour. Their footsteps echoed as they moved between the cars, searching for an exit that wasn't blocked by Whitmore's kill team. There! Marks pointed to a ramp leading up to street level. If we can reach... A black SUV screeched around the corner, blocking the ramp. More appeared from other directions, boxing them in with professional precision. Doors opened and Spectre Group operatives emerged, at least 20 of them, weapons trained. The suited man from the Bethesda facility stepped out last, megaphone in hand. Commander Sterling, Ms. Chen. This ends now. Surrender, and I promise it'll be quick. Fight, and we'll make sure it takes hours. Maya felt Sterling's weight against her, felt him struggling to stay upright. They were surrounded, outnumbered, with no backup coming. The MPS were still fighting in the building above. Capitol Police were dealing with the lockdown, and the senators who'd heard the recording were probably being evacuated to secure locations. No one was coming to save them. "What's your name?" Sterling called out, his voice carrying despite his weakness. The suited man seemed surprised by the question. "Why does it matter?" "Because I like to know who's about to commit murder on national television." "There are no cameras here, Commander." "Are you sure about that?" Sterling gestured upward with his free hand. Maya followed his gaze and saw them. The security cameras mounted throughout the parking structure, their red recording lights active despite the power outage. Battery backup systems, designed to capture evidence during emergencies. The suited man saw them too, his expression shifting. "Doesn't matter. By the time anyone reviews that footage, you'll be dead and Senator Whitmore will control the narrative. We'll be called heroes who stopped a terrorist attack." "That's the thing about narratives," a new voice said, echoing through the garage. "They only work if people believe them." Marcus Hendricks stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, holding not a weapon, but a phone streaming video. "Every word you just said was broadcast live to 17,000 people watching a federal prosecutor's emergency channel. Every threat, every admission, every tactical position. You're not shadows anymore. You're actors in a drama the whole world is watching." The suited man spun toward his operatives. "Kill the feed! Find that phone!" But more phones appeared, held by staffers and officials who'd been hiding in the parking structure during the lockdown, who'd heard the gunfire and started recording, each one streaming to different platforms, creating a hydra of documentation that couldn't be cut off without killing dozens of witnesses on camera. "You've lost," Sterling said, straightening despite the pain. "The recording is authenticated. The conspiracy is exposed, and now you've just admitted to conspiracy to commit murder in front of thousands of witnesses. Even Whitmore can't spin this." The suited man's hand moved to his weapon. Maya saw the calculation in his eyes. He could still kill them, could still complete the mission even if it meant his own destruction. Some men were true believers willing to burn for their cause. But then sirens filled the air, growing louder. Red and blue lights strobed through the garage entrance as what looked like every police vehicle in Washington descended on the Capitol. The cavalry had finally arrived, drawn by the reports of active shooters and the viral videos flooding social media. The Spectre Group operatives lowered their weapons, recognizing the futility of fighting an army. The suited man stood frozen, watching his mission collapse in real time. "Down on the ground!" The order came from a SWAT team pouring into the garage. Overwhelming force finally on the right side. Everyone on the ground, hands visible. Maya helped Sterling down carefully, protecting his head as they complied. Around them, the operatives were being surrounded, disarmed, zip-tied with efficient brutality. The suited man went last, his face empty of everything except the realization that he'd just destroyed his own life on camera. It took 2 hours to sort through the chaos. Maya and Sterling were separated, taken to different secure locations for debriefing and medical treatment. Maya found herself in a Capitol Police medical station, being examined by a doctor who treated her scrapes and exhaustion with professional detachment while FBI agents waited to take her statement. She told them everything for the third time, her voice mechanical with fatigue. They recorded every word, cross-referenced it with the recordings, with Sterling's testimony, with the evidence from the digital files, building a case that would be unassailable in court. "Ms. Chen, you're free to go," the lead agent finally said. "We'll need you available for further questioning, but you're not under arrest. In fact, there's someone outside who wants to see you." Maya stepped into the corridor and found Jennifer Marks waiting, her professional composure cracked by what looked like relief. "Sterling's stable," Marks said before Maya could ask. "They've got him at Walter Reed under military guard, treating the poisoning and documenting his injuries for the prosecution. He's asking for you." "What about Whitmore?" "Arrested an hour ago. Federal marshals took him into custody at his estate while he was trying to board a private jet to the Cayman Islands. He'll be arraigned in the morning on charges including conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and about 40 other felonies. His attorney is already trying to cut a deal, but with the recorded evidence and live testimony, there's nothing to deal. He's finished." Maya felt something release in her chest, a tension she'd been carrying since that first moment in the ER when she'd refused to abandon bed 4. "And the others? Voss, Cross, Kessler?" "All being questioned. Voss and Cross are claiming they were just following protocol, didn't know Sterling was being set up for assassination. We'll see if that holds up when we review the hospital's communications with Spectre Group. Kessler resigned an hour ago, probably hoping to avoid prosecution. It won't work." They walked through the Capitol building, now secure but still showing signs of the battle. Bullet holes in marble walls, blood on the floors being cleaned by hazmat teams, the scars of democracy defending itself. Staffers moved through the corridors with shell-shocked expressions, trying to process what had happened in their workplace. Outside, dawn was breaking over Washington, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. News crews were set up on every corner, broadcasting the story that was already dominating every channel, every website, every conversation. Maya saw her own face on the screens, the hospital ID photo they'd used when calling her a fugitive, now accompanied by headlines like "Nurse Who Exposed Senator's Crimes" and "Whistleblower Survives Assassination Attempt at Capitol." A car took her to Walter Reed Medical Center, where Sterling was recovering in a private room under guard by Marines who looked like they'd take a bullet before letting anyone through. They recognized Maya and stepped aside. Sterling was sitting up in bed, clean and shaved, IV lines running into his arms, delivering fluids and antibiotics. He looked decades younger than he had in the parking garage. The weight of secrecy and survival finally lifted. "They're saying I'm a hero," he said when Maya entered. "After 3 years of being dead, suddenly I'm a hero." "You always were," Maya said, sitting in the chair beside his bed. "You just weren't recognized for it." "Neither were you. That press conference, walking into the federal building, standing up to Whitmore in the Senate chamber, that took courage I'm not sure I could have managed. You charged into gunfire to save me. Don't talk about courage like you don't know what it means." Sterling smiled, tired but genuine. "We made a good team. A dying SEAL and a night shift nurse against the most powerful senator in Washington. Shouldn't have worked. But it did. Because you didn't give up. They ordered you to move me, threatened your job, hunted you across state lines, tried to kill you multiple times. Any rational person would have walked away. But you didn't." Maya thought about all the patients she'd fought for over 6 years, all the times she'd stood up to doctors and administrators when protocol conflicted with care. "I took an oath to do no harm. That doesn't stop being true just because someone powerful orders me to." "The Navy's offering you a position," Sterling said. "Civilian medical consultant to Naval Special Warfare. They want someone who understands both medical care and operational security, Someone who proved they can be trusted with classified information. The pay's better than hospital nursing, and you'd be helping the people who risk everything for this country. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing the offer. 3 days ago, she'd been a night shift nurse, worried about paying rent and avoiding burnout. Now she was being offered a position that would reshape her entire career. "What about you?" she asked. "What happens to Commander Jacob Sterling now that he's not dead anymore?" "They're offering me a choice. Return to active duty with a new identity and assignment, or retire with full benefits and the freedom to testify publicly about everything I've seen. Either way, I get my life back. Such as it is." "Which will you choose?" Sterling looked out the window at the sunrise. "I spent 3 years hiding, gathering evidence, watching good people die because they knew too much. I think I'm done with secrets. Time to live in the light, even if it's uncomfortable." Maya understood that impulse. The last 72 hours had been the most terrifying of her life, but also the most purposeful. She'd made a difference not by following orders, but by refusing to comply when compliance meant injustice. "I'll take the Navy position," she said. "On one condition, I maintain clinical privileges at a civilian hospital. I'm not giving up patient care entirely." "They'll agree to that. You're a national hero now. You get to make demands." The word hero still felt strange. Maya had only done what seemed necessary in the moment, what her training and conscience demanded. But looking back at the chain of decisions that had led from Bedford to the capital, she recognized the courage it had taken. Not the dramatic courage of combat, but the quiet courage of standing firm when everyone was telling her to step aside. Over the following weeks, the full scope of Whitmore's conspiracy emerged through testimony and document analysis. The black sites had held 73 prisoners, most of whom had been transferred to legitimate facilities once the exposure began. 32 Spectre Group operatives were arrested and charged with crimes ranging from kidnapping to murder. Dr. Voss lost his medical license for violating patient care standards. Administrator Cross was indicted for conspiracy and obstruction. Senator Marcus Whitmore's trial became the political event of the decade. Maya testified for 6 hours, walking the jury through every moment from Sterling's arrival at St. Catherine's to the firefight in the Capitol parking garage. Sterling testified for 3 days, his calm recitation of facts devastating to the defense. The recordings played in court, Whitmore's own voice condemning him. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. As marshals led him away, Whitmore looked back at Maya one last time, his expression not angry but bewildered, as if he still couldn't understand how a nurse had brought down his empire. Maya returned to work 6 months later, splitting her time between the Naval Special Warfare Medical Team and a civilian ER in Arlington. The administrators at her new hospital treated her with careful respect, and the other nurses looked at her like someone who'd survived combat. In a way, she had. One evening, finishing a shift where she'd saved 2 patients from septic shock and talked a resident through a difficult intubation, Maya found Keiko waiting in the parking lot. "You're late," Keiko said with a slight smile. "Sterling's promotion ceremony started 20 minutes ago." They drove to the naval facility where Sterling was being restored to active duty with a new assignment, training the next generation of SEALs. The ceremony was small, just senior officers, a few fellow service members, and the 2 women who'd fought beside him when it mattered most. Admiral Chambers pinned new insignia on Sterling's uniform and spoke about courage, integrity, and the price of truth. Sterling stood at attention, his posture perfect, looking nothing like the fevered man who'd collapsed on a gurney 3 nights into what should have been a quiet shift. Afterward, the 3 of them stood outside the building, watching the sun set over the Potomac. "They're putting together a task force to investigate other black site operations that might exist," Sterling said. "Looking for more programs that went off the rails. They want me to consult." "Will you?" Maya asked. "Someone has to. But this time I won't be doing it alone, hiding in shadows and hoping someone believes me. This time the system is actually working." He looked at Maya. "Because you made it work. You forced the truth into the light when everyone was trying to bury it in darkness." "We all did," Maya said. "You for gathering the evidence, Keiko for protecting it, Hendricks for fighting to hear it. One person can't take down a conspiracy that deep." "No," Keiko agreed. But one person can refuse to be complicit. That's where it starts, with someone saying, no, this isn't right, and I won't help you hide it. Maya thought about that moment in the ER when she'd stepped between Sterling and the security guards, when every rational calculation said to comply and every instinct screamed to resist. The choice that had seemed so small in the moment had cascaded into consequences she never could have predicted. I got a call from a nursing school last week, she said. They want me to speak to graduating students about ethical decision-making under pressure, about what to do when authority figures order you to violate your professional standards. What will you tell them? Sterling asked. That the oath matters more than the job, that patients deserve advocates even when advocacy is dangerous, that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage because people don't see you coming until you've already changed everything. She thought about Dr. Voss dismissing her concerns, about Administrator Cross threatening her job, about the suited men who'd assumed a nurse couldn't possibly threaten their carefully constructed conspiracy. They'd all underestimated her, and that underestimation had been their fatal mistake. The Navy's opening a new medical ethics program, Keiko said, teaching personnel how to recognize and report illegal orders, how to blow whistles without getting killed. They're naming it the Sterling Chen Protocol. Maya felt emotion tighten her throat. Her name linked with Sterling's in a program designed to protect future whistleblowers, to create the kind of institutional support they'd had to fight for. It meant the system was learning, evolving, becoming slightly better because they'd refused to let it stay broken. There's something else, Sterling said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. The families of my team, the SEALs who died in the Operation Whitmore ordered, they wanted me to give you this. Maya opened it and found a handwritten letter signed by multiple people, thanking her for bringing their loved ones' killers to justice, for proving their deaths weren't accidents or failures, but murders that deserved punishment. Some included photos, service members in uniform, smiling, alive before Whitmore had decided they knew too much. They said you gave them something they thought they'd never get, Sterling continued quietly. Closure. Truth. The knowledge that their sacrifices weren't in vain. Maya folded the letter carefully, adding it to the collection of correspondence she'd received, from former patients, from nurses inspired by her story, from people who'd watched the press conference and testimony, and felt something shift in their understanding of what one person could accomplish. I've been thinking about what happens next, she said, beyond the Navy work and the hospital shifts. There are other nurses out there facing the same pressures I did. Administrators who prioritize donors over patients, doctors who value convenience over care, systems that punish whistleblowers. Someone should advocate for them. You'd be good at that, Keiko said. You've got credibility now. When you talk about standing up to institutional pressure, people listen. But I don't want it to be about me. It should be about the principles, patient advocacy, professional integrity, the courage to say no when compliance means harm. Then make it about that, Sterling suggested. Start a foundation, create resources, build networks of support for healthcare workers who need them. Use the platform you've been given to amplify voices that usually get silenced. Maya considered the idea, feeling it take shape in her mind with the same clarity that had guided her through the chaos of the last few months. She'd never sought to be a public figure or a symbol of resistance, but life had thrust that role upon her, and she could either resent it or use it to create something meaningful. The Sterling Chen Foundation for Healthcare Ethics, she said, testing the words, providing legal support, documentation resources, and public advocacy for medical professionals who report patient care violations. I like it, Sterling said, and I'm in. Whatever you need, testimony, connections, credibility, you've got it. Same here, Keiko added. I'm done operating in shadows. Time to stand in the light and make sure the next person who tries to expose corruption doesn't have to do it alone. They stood together as darkness fell over Washington, three people who'd survived a conspiracy's attempt to silence them, who'd turned their individual courage into collective power. Maya thought about how far she'd come from that quiet night shift at St. Catherine's, how one choice to protect a patient had transformed her entire life. She didn't regret it. Not the fear, not the danger, not the cost. Because in the end, the truth had won. Not easily, not cleanly, but decisively. Whitmore was in prison. His conspiracy was dismantled. The system had been forced to confront its own corruption and had emerged slightly better for the confrontation. And Maya Chen, the night shift nurse who'd been dismissed as a troublemaker and hunted as a terrorist, had proven that underestimation was the greatest gift her enemies could have given her. They'd never imagined that someone so ordinary, so powerless, so easily overlooked could bring down an empire of lies. They'd been wrong. 6 months later, Maya stood before a graduating class of nursing students at the same university she'd attended, looking out at young faces full of idealism and hope. She recognized herself in them, eager to help, trained to heal, not yet hardened by the compromises and politics that infected healthcare. You're about to enter a profession that will ask you to be advocates for people who can't advocate for themselves, she told them. You'll face pressure to look the other way, to prioritize policy over patients, to let injustice slide because fighting it seems too hard or too dangerous. And in those moments, you'll have to decide what kind of nurse you want to be. She thought about Sterling dying on a gurney, about Keiko making a last stand, about Hendricks risking his career to hear the truth. I was a night shift nurse working in a forgotten corner of a struggling hospital. Nobody important, nobody powerful, just someone doing a job. And when I saw something wrong, I made a choice that changed everything. Not because I was special or brave or prepared, but because I remembered why I became a nurse in the first place. The students were silent, listening with the intensity of people who understood they were hearing something that mattered. The world will underestimate you. Administrators will dismiss you. Doctors will talk over you. Patients' families will demand the impossible and blame you when miracles don't happen. And through all of that, you have to hold on to the truth that you matter. Your judgment matters. Your advocacy matters. Your willingness to stand up when everyone else sits down matters more than you can possibly imagine. She saw some students nodding, others taking notes, a few with tears in their eyes. 3 months ago, a dying Navy SEAL whispered the truth about a senator's crimes, and I had a choice. Abandon him to save my career or protect him and risk everything. I chose protection. And that choice, made by one ordinary nurse in one emergency room, brought down a conspiracy that had killed dozens of people and corrupted the highest levels of government. Maya stepped away from the podium, speaking directly to them now, person to person. You have that same power. Maybe you won't face senators and assassins. Maybe your fight will be quieter, standing up to a doctor who's cutting corners, reporting unsafe staffing levels, advocating for a patient everyone else has given up on. But those fights matter just as much, because healthcare ethics isn't about dramatic showdowns. It's about the daily choice to put patients first, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She finished with the words that had become her foundation's motto. They'll underestimate you. Let them, because underestimated people can change the world. You just have to have the courage to try. The applause started small and built into something thunderous. Maya stood there, accepting it not for herself, but for every nurse who'd ever been dismissed, every whistleblower who'd been silenced, every person who'd chosen conscience over comfort. After the ceremony, a young student approached, maybe 23, with the nervous energy of someone on the edge of a career. Ms. Chen, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been working as a nursing assistant while finishing school, and I've seen things that worried me, but I didn't know if I should speak up. After hearing your story, I filed a report about unsafe patient ratios in my unit. They're investigating now. Maya took the student's hand. That took courage, real courage. How are they treating you? Some of the staff are angry. They say I'm causing trouble, making waves, but others are thanking me for finally saying what they've been thinking. And the patients are safer. That's what matters, right? That's all that matters, Maya confirmed. And if you need support, legal, professional, emotional, the foundation has resources. You're not alone in this. The student's eyes filled with tears. I thought I might be. Everyone makes it seem like you're supposed to just put up with things, not rock the boat. The boat needs rocking sometimes, otherwise it just keeps sailing in the wrong direction. Maya smiled. You did the right thing. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. She watched the student walk away with straighter posture, more confidence. This was the real victory, not the dramatic takedown of a senator, but the ripple effect of one story inspiring others to find their own courage. That evening, Maya returned to her Arlington apartment and found Sterling waiting in the lobby, out of uniform, looking almost relaxed. "How was the speech?" he asked. "Hopeful. How was training?" "Exhausting. The new recruits have more questions about ethics and rules of engagement than any class I've taught. Turns out exposing a conspiracy makes people take those topics more seriously." They walked to a nearby restaurant, a quiet place where they could talk without being recognized. Over the past months, they developed an easy friendship built on shared trauma and mutual respect. Sterling was one of the few people who understood what it felt like to have your life completely upended by choosing truth over safety. "Keiko's getting married," Sterling said over dinner. "Found someone who doesn't mind dating a woman who's officially dead." "Is she asking us to be in the wedding?" "Knowing Keiko, she'll probably elope and tell us about it 6 months later." Sterling smiled. "But she wanted me to tell you that the Foundation's first major donation came through. Anonymous donor, $2 million. Enough to fund operations for at least 3 years." Maya felt gratitude wash over her. The Foundation was still new, still finding its footing, but already fielding calls from healthcare workers who needed legal protection or advice on how to report violations safely. $2 million meant they could expand, hire staff, create the kind of institutional support she desperately needed during those 72 hours of running. "Any idea who the donor is?" she asked. "Admiral Chambers is my guess. She's been vocal about supporting whistleblower protections, or possibly one of the families who lost people in Whitmore's operations. They've been incredibly generous with their time and resources. Either way, it means we can help more people. That's what matters." Sterling raised his glass. "To helping people. The only mission that actually counts." Maya clinked her glass against his, thinking about the strange path that had led them here. Two people who should never have met, thrown together by conspiracy and survival, now building something that might prevent others from having to make the impossible choices they'd faced. "Do you ever wish it had gone differently?" she asked. "That you'd found another way to expose Whitmore without nearly dying, without 3 years of hiding?" Sterling considered the question seriously. "I wish my team had survived. I wish the system had worked the first time we tried to report what we'd seen, instead of forcing us to become fugitives. But do I wish I hadn't fought? No. Some things are worth the cost. Even if the cost is everything? Especially then. Because if we're not willing to sacrifice for truth and justice, then what are we really protecting? What kind of country are we serving?" He met her eyes. "You paid a cost too. Your career at St. Catherine's, your anonymity, your sense of safety. Was it worth it?" Maya thought about the patients she'd saved in the months since, about the students she'd inspired, about the foundation that was already making a difference. She thought about sleeping peacefully now, knowing she'd done everything possible to protect someone who needed protection. "Yes," she said simply. "It was worth it." They finished dinner and walked through Arlington's streets, just two people among thousands, no longer hunted or hiding. The city lights reflected off the Potomac, and somewhere in the distance the Capitol dome glowed white against the night sky, a symbol of the democracy they'd fought to protect. "The senator is appealing his conviction," Sterling mentioned, "claims the evidence was obtained illegally, that we violated his rights. Will it work?" "No chance. Multiple federal judges have reviewed everything. The appeal is just him grasping at straws, trying to delay the inevitable." "Good." They reached Maya's apartment building and stood in the lobby, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you," Sterling said finally. "For everything. For not walking away when you had every reason to. For standing up when everyone else sat down. For being exactly the kind of person I needed when I needed them most." "You did the same for me," Maya replied. "You showed me that ordinary people can stand against extraordinary corruption and win. That's a gift. We should do this again sometime. Dinner, conversation, strategizing about how to change the world one healthcare worker at a time." "I'd like that." Sterling left, and Maya climbed the stairs to her apartment, tired but content. Inside, she found her laptop and opened the Foundation's website, reading through the messages from people asking for help, offering support, sharing their own stories of standing up to institutional pressure. One message caught her attention. A nurse in Seattle reporting that her hospital was falsifying patient records to avoid regulatory penalties. She'd been threatened with termination if she reported it, and she didn't know what to do. Maya began typing a response, offering legal resources, documentation advice, and the assurance that she wasn't alone. It was a small thing, just words on a screen, but she remembered how desperately she'd needed exactly this kind of support during those dark hours of running. The work of protecting truth-tellers would never be finished. There would always be another conspiracy, another cover-up, another person with power trying to silence someone with courage. But now there was also a network, a foundation, a community of people committed to standing together. Maya finished the message and sent it, then opened her email to find dozens more requests for help. She worked through them one by one, each response a small act of resistance against the forces that wanted healthcare workers to stay silent and compliant. Hours later, as dawn began to break over Arlington, Maya finally closed her laptop and stood at her window. The city was waking up, people heading to early shifts, starting their days, living lives that might never intersect with conspiracy or corruption. She thought about who she'd been before Sterling had whispered his truth, before the gunfire and the manhunt and the Senate hearing, that Maya had been competent, dedicated, professional. But she'd also been isolated, overlooked, dismissed as just another nurse doing a job anyone could do. The Maya standing here now understood something her former self hadn't. There was no such thing as just a nurse. No such thing as just doing a job. Every profession, every position, every person had the power to either uphold injustice or challenge it. The only question was which choice you made when the moment came. She'd made her choice. And in making it, she'd discovered a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Not the strength of weapons or authority, but the quiet strength of refusing to comply, of standing firm when everyone else stepped aside, of believing that truth mattered more than convenience. They'd underestimated her. The doctors, the administrators, the senator, the assassins. They'd looked at a night shift nurse and seen someone powerless, someone who could be ignored or intimidated or eliminated. They'd been catastrophically wrong. And now, because of that underestimation, because of their failure to recognize the threat until it was too late, the world was slightly better. Whistleblowers had more protection, healthcare workers had more support, and one very powerful senator was spending the rest of his life in prison. Maya smiled at her reflection in the window, seeing not a victim or a hero, but simply someone who'd done what needed doing when it needed doing. Someone who'd taken an oath seriously enough to risk everything protecting it. Someone who'd proven that the people society overlooks are often the ones who change it most. The sun rose fully over Arlington, painting everything gold. Maya's phone buzzed with another message from the foundation, another person needing help, another opportunity to make a difference. She picked it up and got to work.